Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about Webpack today, which is going to be interesting. How many of you are working with Webpack today? There are other sessions around here, really good ones. This is going to be a very basic intro one. I just want to prepare you for that. How many of you have tried Webpack and given up? Oh, it's like a hand going up, and I was like, there's a brave dude. It's admitting the fact that he knows, and it went down again. That is another very common way of doing it. Like, we have this Webpack file that we found online or somebody else set up, and we're now stuck with that, and we have no idea how it works. Hopefully, at the end of this, you will know what that Webpack file actually does and how it works. So, my name is Klug. I work as a software developer at a company called 1337 in Stockholm. And I've been doing web development on and off for the last 18, 20 years. I had a little move away from web, or away from this kind of web, and I decided to go all in on this fantastic technology called Silverlight. Tip from the coach: don't go with Silverlight. Silverlight was a fantastic idea, but I'm back in the web world again. And interestingly enough, the web has changed a lot between me doing it and then doing 4 years of Silverlight and then coming back again. And the web is moving at an incredible pace. About a year ago, I would go to conferences and I would talk about Gulp. And I would talk about build pipelines using Gulp and using Grunt. And now I'm here talking about Webpack. And in between, I've been out talking about running pure NPM scripts and all of that. But Webpack seems to be where people are concentrating their efforts at the moment. So for the next couple of days, what you're hearing here is going to be useful. And after that, something else is going to come up, and it's going to have some weird name you can't pronounce. So we're going to have a look at getting started with Webpack, right? And Webpack is interesting, because Webpack often starts with, you need to Webpack it. Somebody comes and says, you're building the front-end web stuff, you need to Webpack it. And general reaction is, I don't actually know if I can. Webpack is complicated. It's like a whole world that I have to learn. And weirdly enough, us developers, when we say, I don't know if I can, or it's like, I'm scared, there's always somebody coming with that fantastic comment about, oh, I know that you can do this, I believe in you, and all of that crap. And it's just complete bullshit. And with Webpack, it's kind of this, right? You get somebody coming, I know you can do it, and you're like, no, I want to sit in the corner and cry because I don't want to touch this. The thing is, it's not that hard. I am going to try to be Morpheus and show you the path, and I'm going to show you that there is no spoon. There is, especially because we're not doing cooking, we're actually using Webpack, so there's no spoon to begin with. I will show you basics. However, I did find there's a tweet that I don't know, does anybody know who Todd Motto is? He's a pretty big name in the Angular sphere. He has Angular education or training online. And he's kind of like an inspiration because he's really good at what he does, and he does web stuff. So I follow him on Twitter, and he tweeted this. Decided last night I was going to learn Webpack. 20 minutes later, I was Googling visa requirements to Hawaii and how to become a farmer. I was like, it kind of sums up the feeling of getting started with Webpack. You take this technology and go, it's just a JavaScript framework, and you start working with it, and you go, I am so screwed. I have no idea. But it's really cool because I learned something from Webpack. I learned something that I forgot many years ago that I actually learned when I started doing code. If you read the manual, it helps. It's like one of those wonderful things that after 20 years in this industry, I have figured out that if you pick up a new tool like Webpack and you go to their docs site and you read their docs, you understand what it does. It is way faster than picking up the tech and then going, I'll go on Google and I'll just Google Webpack and whatever I'm doing, and then you get 50,000 different blog posts with different ideas, and then you do this. I'll scan a few of them, just briefly skimming through what's being said there, just looking at basically the code, and then I'll do copy-paste of the different code pieces into one document, and hopefully it will work. Anybody recognize that kind of coding? I might have been, yeah, a few. I might have been doing that for a couple of years. Actually reading the documentation is freaking awesome. the documentation contains the documentation, everything you need to know. So I went and I read it, and Webpack is really, really simple. I'm going to be coding pretty much the entire session, but I did want to show you a little bit, like the basics of Webpack. Webpack is a bundler, right? Webpack bundles resources. So you start out by telling Webpack that I want to bundle this file. That's it. That's a good start, right? We'll start there. Webpack then looks at that file, and inside that file we're using some form of module-based things in JavaScript. So we do imports and exports or whatever module system we're using, and it points to other files. So Webpack then looks at those other files and builds a graph of those files and figures out that, oh, if I need to bundle app.js, I need to bundle the service.ts as well. And yes, you're more than welcome to mix and match your JavaScript and your TypeScript, and holy crap, I'm making a reference to a less file from a JavaScript file. That is kind of perverse, I know, but it works, you can, because Webpack doesn't care. Webpack just goes, you want to bundle stuff? I will bundle stuff, just tell me what to bundle. So it goes and it looks at these files, and then it figures out that, okay, so the service TS requires entities TS, so it adds that to the graph, and then the layout.less actually contains some image references, so it looks into the less and looks, whoa, so you want to bundle the background.jpg and icon.gif as well. And Webpack goes, fine, I'll bundle this for you. And it takes all of that stuff, and it gives you a JavaScript file. So Chris, you're telling me that you're giving some form of JavaScript framework a JavaScript file, a TypeScript file, a less file, a JPEG file, and a GIF file, and you get a JavaScript file out at the end? What kind of magic is this that can take GIF and turn it into JavaScript? It kind of does and it kind of doesn't. You can bundle any form of resource as long as there's a way to convert that resource into JavaScript. Because Webpack only knows JavaScript. So in the end, you're going to get JavaScript, that's it. But there are tools that can say either it can take the icon.gif and say, hey, that's a small GIF file. I'll just convert that into a base 64 encoded string and add that to the bundle. Or, hey, the background.jpg is pretty big, so I'll make sure that when I bundle this, I'm actually going to output both that file, but wherever that file is being used, I'm going to add a URL to it instead. So I'm going to have that as two separate things. But it kind of figures it out, as long as you have the right tools to convert everything into whatever you need, or into JavaScript. So we have an entry point, which is where we start. Your Webpack configuration can have as many entry points as you want. But an entry point is that one start file that you say, I want to bundle this file, figure out everything else that needs to go into this bundle for this thing to work. Then we use loaders in Webpack to figure out how to transform anything that is native JavaScript, because Webpack will only work with JavaScript. So if you have files that are not JavaScript, you need to tell Webpack that here is a so-called loader that knows how to handle TypeScript. So the TypeScript loader will see a TypeScript file, and then it will take that TypeScript file, transpile it to JavaScript, and then hand that JavaScript file to Webpack. And in the case of less is a bit complicated. I'm probably not going to, I might show you that later on. In the case of less, there will be a little thing that converts less to CSS. That's step number one. Then there's another loader that converts the CSS to a string in JavaScript, and it becomes a JavaScript string. And then there's another loader that takes that JavaScript string and adds a little JavaScript thing around it to make sure that that string is being written to the browser as the bundle loads. So you can chain different loaders to do different things. And finally, we have plugins. Plugins is kind of the final step in Webpack. So if there's anything except just loading in files that you need to do, it goes into a plugin. So plugin can do things like delete files, move and copy files across, optimize images. So you can have a plugin that goes in and optimizes all your JPEG images. So as a build step, they get optimized in size. You have plugins that will extract. So if you don't like your style from your layout.less to be a JavaScript, there's a plugin that will then go and extract that CSS and put it into a separate CSS file instead. So plugins are allowed to sort of poke around inside of your bundle system and make sure that your bundle system can do more than just add JavaScript stuff. And in the end, you get an output. You get a file. Does that make sense? Does it seem complicated? Somebody's nodding. I saw a nod. Does this seem complicated? Hands up. Sweet. I'm gonna convince you it's not. That is, by the way, the cutest GIF ever. I'm gonna switch over and we're gonna do code. There's just gonna be code from now on. So I have a project. I'm gonna build a little application. I wanna make one thing very clear though. The application I'm building is useless. I'm not building an application for you to see me build an application. I'm building an application because I want to show you what happens when you build an application and you want to get that application to work with Webpack. So the application is secondary. I didn't want to pull out a pre-built application and have you wonder what it was actually doing. So I'll build an application and we'll bundle it and package it up with Webpack. So right now I have an empty page. There's nothing on it. It's just an index page, and in the source folder there is nothing. We're okay with that? Cool. So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and I'm going to add a file in here. And I'm going to add, I'm going to add a folder first, a demo. And then inside of demo, I'm going to add an app.js. And inside my app.js, I'm going to do document.body.inner.html equals h1 hello world. Actually, let's do hello from JavaScript to make sure you know that it's JavaScript, right? Everybody understands what that does. If you don't understand what that line does, you're going to have problems with the rest of this session. I would also recommend that if you have a problem with that line, that you look at potentially switching careers, because this should be fairly obvious. I don't want to be that guy. If you don't know JavaScript, that's fine, but this should be fairly obvious. It sets the inner HTML of the body tag on in the page to hello from JavaScript. It's pretty simple. Cool. And obviously, once we've built this fairly advanced application, we need to Webpack it. Right. Yes. So I'm going to pull up my trusty console here, and we're going to go ahead and say npm I for install Webpack. So Webpack is an npm package. And we're going to install webpack-cli, because they split the CLI and Webpack into two parts. And I'm going to save that to my developer dependencies. And while that installs, we can go ahead and do something else. So that's going to run in the background. And to configure Webpack, we create a webpack.config.js. And you can even see it gets a little square icon in Visual Studio Code because it knows it's a Webpack config file because it has the right name. And in here, I'm going to say, I'm going to have a config. There's going to be a big config object that has all the configuration that Webpack needs to do its work. And I'm going to do module.exports equals config. So it's just a JavaScript module, and it exports the configuration. And my configuration needs a bit more than that. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and say mode. This is new in Webpack 4, I think it is. There are predefined build modes. So you can set none, in which case you take the responsibility of doing everything. I'm going to do development. Development means that I don't want my code to be minified and optimized or anything like that. Just bundle it for me. And then you can switch that from development to production, and all of a sudden, Webpack will do all of the optimization of minifying it and all of the stuff that you need before you actually deploy it to production. So I'm going to set mode development, and then we do entry. I told you about entry points, so we need to define an entry point. What do I want to bundle? And entry points are defined as an object, and I give it a name. In this case, I'm going to name it demo. And what do I want to bundle in the name under the name demo? Well, I want to bundle ./src/demo/app.js. That's the file that I want to bundle. And then I need to tell it, anybody want to come up and type? Then I'm going to say output, like where do I want to output this thing? Once you've done the bundling, where should I put the output? So I'm going to go and say I want to have a file name. What's the name of the file that I want to output to? And this is not actually a file name. It's a file name pattern. Since we can have many different entry points and export many, bundle many different things, we can go and say name in brackets, and then that part will be changed into demo for this bundle. So I'm going to name my file name.bundle.js. So it's going to end up being demo.bundle.js, and I need to give it a path. So where do I want to output this thing? Okay, I want to output it to ./dist. So I want to put everything in the dist folder. Unfortunately, path is supposed to be a not a relative URL, but an absolute one. So I need to give it the full URL on my machine, which is going to suck. So what we do is, this is npm, right, or node, right? So what we can do is we can go back here and say const path equals require. We just pull in the path library, if I could spell, from node. And then down here we do path.resolve. I cannot type today. Like that. Resolve. Like that. So that gives me the full path to that address on my drive. And pretty much that's it. Was that complicated? You following along so far pretty well. I can't really run this because I didn't install Webpack globally on my machine. I only installed it locally in my project. You can go ahead and install Webpack globally, and then you can just go to your console and you can just write Webpack. Downside to that is you can only have one version of Webpack on your machine. There can only be one version globally installed, so I never install it globally. I only install it locally. That allows us to have multiple versions, but it also means that I can't go down here and write Webpack. Instead, I need to open my package.json, and we'll remove that, and we'll add a script here called build. And whenever I run the build script, I want to run Webpack. Then I say npm run build to run my build script. I run that, and I got an error. What did I do? What have I managed to screw up? What? Oh, thank you. Thank you all for waiting until it failed. So I could freak out up here before you told me. But yeah, it's nice. I'm probably bigger and stronger than you, so I'm going to find you afterwards. So this is cool. I now got a demo.bundle.js in my dist folder, and if we have a look at that, it is awesome because my one line of JavaScript have now become this. But there it is. Here is my one line of JavaScript. And there's a sweet eval in here. Never ever use eval in JavaScript. It is evil. In here it's fine. Trust Webpack. Now that I've got that, I can just go into my index, and at the bottom here, I can go and say script. That didn't come out right. This is going to be a very long session with me typing this poorly. Dist/demo bundle like that, and if I go and say reveal in Explorer, and I double click that, whoop, whoop. It worked. I had one of those too many. Like that. Is anybody impressed? No. Nobody's, no, don't. If you implode for that, no. That was not impressive at all. I'm going to make it better, I promise you. So I'm going to go build my application now. I just want to make sure that, the reason I start out with this is I just want to show you that Webpack doesn't have to be harder than this. If I was just running pure JavaScript and my app.js had references, require statements for other JavaScript files, this is actually all I need. I am done. This is everything I need in 20 minutes. I'm going to give you some more stuff. I'm going to go further because that's me. I give to the audience. That's the way it works. So I'm going to go and say I'm going to create an infrastructure folder. Actually, yes, I am. Infrastructure, like that. And inside of my infrastructure folder, I'm going to add a renderer.ts. I'm going to do TypeScript because I like TypeScript. Inside here, I'm going to create a TypeScript class, like that. And I like my TypeScript, so that seems fine. All it does, it sets the inner HTML of my target element to this thing here. It's a good start. And then in app.js, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say app. I'm going to just import my renderer from infrastructure renderer. And I'm going to pull up a renderer and I'm going to render to document.body. Makes sense, right? Nothing complicated. Downside now is if I try to build this, it's going to go boom. Because Chris, you suck. I cannot resolve infrastructure/renderer. Nope. Because I'm just naming it infrastructure.renderer. It doesn't have a .ts at the end. Normally when we do import statements, we don't put the file ending or file extension at the end. We just assume it figures it out. So we need to go back to Webpack. And we need to go in here somewhere. Order in Webpack doesn't matter. But I'll go in here and I'll say resolve. In the resolve stuff, I can set up whatever Webpack needs to know about how to resolve dependencies. And I can say extensions. And I can say, whenever you find a file that doesn't have a file extension, this... okay, let's try this. There it is. Try adding .ts to the file extension. As a file extension. Or actually, if you can't find the TS one, try adding JS as well. So I need to tell it whatever files to add. This is only for situations when I'm trying to add a file without the file extension. It will try these in order to find if there's a file that fits into that file name. So in this case, I'm adding that for TS. And then I happen to know that Webpack is not a TypeScript bundler. It's a JavaScript bundler. It knows nothing about TypeScript. So we'll go ahead and we'll go and say npm I for install. And we'll install TypeScript, because I need that, TypeScript. And I will install something called a ts-loader. And I'll save that as a dev dependency. So ts-loader stands for TypeScript loader. So it's a loader for Webpack. Anything that has like a -loader name is some form of loader for Webpack. In this case, it's for TypeScript. Once that is installed, I can go in and I'll go in here and I'll say module. Why is it called module? I have no idea. It makes no sense, but it's module. Just accept it. And inside the module, I can define how to handle module bundling. So I'm going to go and say there are rules that it needs to figure out. And a rule, so there's an array of rules, and every rule has a test. And the test in this case is going to be that. So it's actually the test is a regular expression that will be run against the file name. So what this regular expression basically just says, if the file name ends with .ts, you should use this rule. And you can have however complex rules you want, and they will run in order. So the first rule that returns true is the one that will run. And then I'll say use ts-loader. So if you see a TypeScript file, a TS file, use ts-loader. ts-loader will then go and read the TypeScript, transform the TypeScript into JavaScript, and give the JavaScript back to Webpack to do the bundling. If I take this, and, oh, if I run this, it's, that's not what I wanted. If I run this, it's once again going to explode. I'm just going to show you that it explodes. And the reason it explodes is that it says, I can't figure out the files list in the tsconfig.json because it's empty, blah, 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 blah. It requires me to have a tsconfig file, like a TypeScript configuration file in my project. So I'm going to go in here and say tsconfig.json. And inside there, I'm going to add a... Are you kidding me? Are you really going to do this to me? It is. This is not what I want, but my snippet thing in Visual Studio Code apparently doesn't want to work. What we want to do is that. So it's just a simple TypeScript file, or tsconfig file that defines that the target is supposed to be ECMAScript 5. That's all I need to put in there. And after that, I can go out here and I can run build. And it says that it's emitted a demo bundle. And if we go back out here and we refresh, it now says hello from TypeScript. So I've got a bundled thing, which is a combination of JavaScript and TypeScript bundled into one file and running in my application. However, having to run build every time I make a change to a file is going to suck immensely. So what we can do is we can go to package.json. We'll go ahead and we'll add a watch script instead. And we'll add -- watch. Actually, we'll add like that, webpack -- watch. We run npm run watch now. It is going to run Webpack in watch mode. So it's going to give me a bundle, and then it's going to sit there and listen to all the files that are in the system. And whenever one file changes, it will rebundle it for me. So this will just be running in the background while I build my fantastic application. Is it going to be a fantastic application? Not really. It's going to be an application. And I'm going to cheat because I'm going to go in here. I'm going to pull out some stuff. We'll go over to Reveal in Explorer. I'm going to add this because you don't want to see me. Considering how poorly I type, you don't want to see me write this. So what I've done is I've created a simple little web component rendering tool. It's not something you want to use. I just wanted to try something out, and it kind of worked. It's a renderer, and it has a render method, and it renders to a specific HTML element, and it takes what is called an I-component. An I-component is some form of like web component-like thing that can render stuff in my view. And I pass a component in, and it pulls out the template from the component. It sets up the template, looks for subcomponents in that template, and then renders that thing with some data binding stuff going on to the UI. What it does is really not that important. What it is it's TypeScript. So there's more stuff in here, and you'll also see that I'm depending on other TypeScript stuff in here now. So I'm depending on a few interfaces that was in here as well. So a couple of TypeScript interfaces in here. Once I have that, it's a little helper tool. It looks a bit like Angular when you use it. It is not a replacement for Angular. But it means that I can go into my demo here, and I can add a new file. I'm going to call it app.component.ts, because it's going to be my application component that's going to be rendered. And I'm going to go ahead and say app component. There it is. So I'm adding this thing here. It's an app component that implements I-component. And I-component defines a getTemplate string method, which is what is going to be rendered on screen. About it, right? Make sense? It should render a div and an h1 with hello from app component. That's about it. Once again, it pulls in some interfaces from the infrastructure stuff. If I go back to my app.js, I'll go ahead and I'll change this here to, actually I'll go ahead and say import from ./app component, and I will go ahead and ask the renderer to render. I get IntelliSense and all of that. So I'll go and say, please render the app component to document.body. It rebuilds everything down here, even though I've added a bunch of new files. It just rebuilds everything for me. It only rebuilds the stuff that has changed. So it doesn't rebundle the whole thing. It has an in-memory cache of everything that's been bundled before. If I go back out here and press F5, it now renders my other thing. So I can just keep working. This thing runs in the background. You can just add TypeScript stuff and do things, build your application. This thing will bundle things in the background, and you're fine. Nobody's impressed so far. Okay. This is kind of cool, but I'm kind of screwing up because this here is actually something called a header component. I have a specific component to render a header. So instead of that, I'm going to go and say, I want to have a header here, like that. And the header component is available here. It's one of those things that I pulled in. It basically just has a hello world header thingy. Once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and, well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and say having inline templates like strings like this is actually kind of shite, to be perfectly honest. We want to have something better. So what we want to do is we want to export that into something else. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a app.component.html. And then I'm going to take my HTML here, move that over to this HTML file over here. I'll close my HTML file, and then in here, I'm going to say import star as template from /, and I get no IntelliSense because Visual Studio thinks that I'm slightly insane when I decide to do an import component.app.component.html. Like that. And now it's going to go, hey, say, you're a moron, you can't do that and everything. That's fine, because I'm going to fix this. But what I'm going to get in the template here is actually my template. So it's going to take that separate HTML file, turn that into a string, and give me that string as the variable template. So I can go up here and say return template. So I now have a JavaScript referencing a TypeScript file, referencing an HTML file, and I want Webpack to bundle all of that for me and just have it work. There are a couple of little things in here that causes some problems. Number one, this thing says that I can't find module HTML blah 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 blah. That is TypeScript not knowing what an HTML file is. To sort that out, you can trick TypeScript by going to this folder here and say I want to add a folder called typings. And inside the typings folder, I'll add an index.d.ts file. And inside that, I'll add an HTML typing. That tells TypeScript that anything with .html is fine. It's going to contain a string. Should you really be doing this? I have no idea. I don't really care. It's a demo. Angular does something similar, so I'm going to say that it's okay. I don't know. I'm going to blame them if it's wrong. Main idea is I want to show you that I can bundle other things than just JavaScript and TypeScript. So I put this in here, but then this thing goes and says, you still suck, because I don't know what to do with that. And Webpack doesn't know what an HTML file is either. So first TypeScript is complaining, and then Webpack is complaining and saying, I don't know what an HTML file is. So I'm going to go and I'm going to stop Webpack, and I'm going to go npm I raw-loader. I'm going to save that as a development dependency. So I install another loader called a raw loader, and then I go in here. We'll do raw loader. So I had another test in here and saying if you find an HTML file or a file that ends with .html, use the raw loader. And the raw loader literally loads the resource as a raw template. So it just takes that HTML content and adds it as a string to the project. That's it. In theory, I should now be able to npm run watch. It goes in bundles and it's all green. Green is good. I go out here, I press F5. It failed. Why did that fail? Did I not? That should be fine. Oops, what have I done now? Did I miss something in building this? Actually, I get no errors. I get nothing. Joys of working with JavaScript. Let's just check this thing here. So we see here it has a demo app component, HTML thingy. It pulls that in. Oh, I know why. I missed a part. In my JavaScript, I need to pull in my header component. Sorry about that. So the header component needs to be registered. So I need to pull in my /component/header. And I pull in my header component because you won't be able to find that thing called header. So I need to say renderer.register component. It's called header. And this is the component type. Run that, bundle, refresh. There it is. So every component needs to be registered for it to figure out that it's available to be rendered. So this is kind of cool. So what you saw here now is that I actually got my HTML in here as a module export. So it actually turns my HTML file into a JavaScript module, which is added to the page. And when I require that into my app component like this string here is going to contain that template. That is pretty cool, according to me. You seem less than impressed. Okay. Next one. Wouldn't it be kind of nice if in my application, in my app component HTML here, could tell the header that it didn't always say hello world? Maybe I want to have a text that was hello from app instead. And to do that, I want to make a little change here. I want to go to my header component. Where is it? Why can't I find my way around this? There it is. Components. That's the one. This is the template right now, but I actually want to change this template here for this. So this is a syntax called handlebars. Handlebars allows us to create a text template and put some logic in there and have handlebars generate whatever is needed. So this has some if stuff. So if there's a variable called text, then render text, otherwise render hello world. So handlebars is a third-party library. I want to add a third-party library to handle that templating thing. So I'll go back out here and I'll do, actually I'll stop that for a little while and I'll do npm I handlebars. That adds handlebars to my application. This is a pure JavaScript library. It's never seen Webpack or anything like that. It's just an old library that I've used several times before. So I installed that, and while that installs, I'm going to go back to my renderer here. And I'm going to replace the create element thing here with this, which uses handlebars to create, takes the template, passes into handlebars, gets a handlebar template, uses that template to compile it together with my context and outputs the information in the end. Once again, application doesn't matter, it's the bundling that's the important part. But it complains about handlebars and says, I don't know what handlebars is. Okay, that is kind of fine. What we need to do is we need to go up here and say import star as handlebars from handlebars. That makes TypeScript happy. It doesn't complain about handlebars anymore. It's available here. Webpack, however, has a little opinion about me doing this. Webpack goes and says, nope. Webpack really doesn't like bundling handlebars straight up. There's some stuff in handlebars that doesn't play nice with Webpack. So I need to tell Webpack that I don't want you to take the raw stuff out of handlebars. I want you to take the pre-compiled version of handlebars and add that. What happens now is that it tries to bundle my stuff, and then it goes and tries to bundle in the raw version of handlebars with the source code. I want it to go and bundle the compiled, pre-built, minified version of handlebars into my application, not build handlebars for me. So to do that, I'll go back to my webpack.config, and I'll go out here, and I'll say, I just need to remember what I need to say here for this to work. There it is. I'm going to say alias, actually up here, alias handlebars. One of those too many. So what I can tell Webpack here is that, by the way, if anybody asks for handlebars as an import, go and import that file instead. So I can go and say, any import of this thing, go and import that thing over here instead. So instead of going to the handlebars index file, go and get the handlebars minified file and import that instead. And we'll try and restart this because I've changed the web config file, or sorry, Webpack config file. That now runs, and if we look at my source code, or my bundle, you'll now see that my bundle has grown a little bit because it now includes handlebars as well, and then my stuff at the end here. So the bundle contains everything needed by Webpack to handle the module loading, as well as handlebars, as well as all of my code. And if I go back out here and I refresh, it says hello-ish from app. Close enough. I'm from Sweden. As it was the Unicode thingy that Dylan talked about the other day. It doesn't handle Swedish very well. I kind of don't like this though, because if I'm doing multiple releases of my application and I bundle handlebars every time I make a new release, the user is going to have to download that new package, that new bundle. And if I bundle handlebars, they're going to have to download another extra few Ks of library that hasn't actually changed. So I want to keep handlebars separate from my bundle. So what I can do is I can go in here and I can say, actually, don't alias handlebars. Instead, I'm going to go down here and say externals. And in externals, I'm going to say handlebars. This says that if you see an import of handlebars, don't touch it. I'll make sure that it's available. And when it's available, the handlebars variable is going to be available on the page as well. So the handlebars in lowercase is if you see this import, don't touch it. And the string thing on the other side is this is what's going to be available. So if anybody tries to use the variable handlebars, that's fine. I put that in there, and we restart this. There it is. and we go back out here and we run it, and it goes up. Nope, can't do that. I don't know what handlebars is. It doesn't know what handlebars is for the very simple reason is that I haven't told it what handlebars is. We'll go out here and we'll say handlebars. We'll pull that in from Cloudflare as a CDN instead, so that when my bundle gets updated, it doesn't touch the handlebar stuff, so handlebars will be cached. And I run it again, and it runs handlebars off a CDN. So I can mix and match my libraries as external ones, or I can bundle them in. It's all up to me whether or not I want to have them in my bundle or as a separate thing. So this is nice, but what happens when I'm talking about new versions? If I keep adding the file name demo.bundle.js, I'm going to get caching, right? All browsers cache aggressively to make the situation better for the user. Whenever I have my tools open here, developer tools, my network tab always has the disabled cache flag ticked. That disables the cache whenever the tools are open, so I'd never get caching issues. If I didn't have that, it would actually be caching my demo.bundle.js aggressively, and new versions would never be released. So to cache bust that, we can actually go into Webpack config, and we can go up to the name, or actually, sorry, down to the name here, and say I want to name it name, and then I want to put in a hash. Restart this. This will now take a hash of the generated bundle and add that to the file name. So if we look here, I now get a bundle called demo.blah.blah.blah.bundle.js. That blah, 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 blah in the middle is actually a hash of that file. So if I keep building my application over and over and over again, as long as the bundle doesn't change, the file name stays the same. As soon as the file changes, the file name changes, and I have cache busting built into my naming strategy. The downside to this is, well, how do I make sure that my index file now imports the right thing? Because this now imports the one without the hash name. And do I need to go in and change my index file every time I get a new hash? Well, actually, you don't. What we're going to do is we're going to remove my imports completely from index.html. I'm going to stop this again, and I'm going to install a new package. So I'm going to do npm I, and I'm going to install HTML Webpack -plugin. And I'm going to save it as a developer dependency. So the HTML Webpack plugin is a plugin that I can add to my Webpack file that will help me with this. Down here in my plugins section. The plugins are actually an array of objects. So I can go in here, and first of all, we need to import my my new plugin. I'm going to do HTML Webpack plugin import. So I'm going to go ahead and import my HTML Webpack plugin. And then down here in my plugins, that was the wrong thing. That's the one. I'm going to add this, and I'm going to tell it there's a plugin now. Each plugin has its own configuration. So in this case, I'm telling it that the template index file is at ./index.html. That's this file here. When you're done, please output it as index.html, but it's going to output it as index.html in the dist folder because that's where I've told it to output my bundles. But run this now. Look into my dist folder. There's now an index file in here. The index file now contains my template file, but at the end, it's added a script tag here with the source set to my new bundle. So every time I build and there's a new bundle name, it will generate a new index.html file for me with that new name inside of it, so I don't have to manually update it. If I go out here just for the heck of it and go reveal in Explorer, and I open this thing here, it's going to look exactly the same because I've made no code changes, but I'm now bundling it with cache busting, which is quite nice. Another thing that Webpack comes with that I kind of like, but I'm sort of torn because I'm a .NET developer, so I do build my applications using ASP.NET Core, is that Webpack actually comes with its own dev server that will handle bundling and setting up a web server on your machine and serving up the index file for you and all of that. So you don't need to go to Visual Studio and IIS Express or something like that if you're just building a static HTML JavaScript website. So the way that works is that we go ahead and we cancel this thing again. And we'll go ahead and install another thing. And yes, It becomes a little bit ridiculous in the demo when I install 59 different NPM packages in an hour. You will be installing one little thing over time, so it's not going to be this ridiculous amount of things to install. But we'll do npm I webpack-dev-server, stored as a development dependency. That installs a new package for me, and in webpack.config, I can go down here, and we can add a dev server config. So I add to my Webpack config, I say, I want to have a dev server. And I want you to serve stuff out of the dist folder. And I want to serve it on port 9000. And it runs Webpack internally. So when I start this thing, it actually starts Webpack, reads the Webpack config file, sets up a web server, and then bundles all of the things in memory and serves stuff. So it has browser connection sync stuff going on. So when you make a change, it actually reloads your browser for you and all of that. And that's where the overlay thing comes in. If you make a change in a file that causes the bundle to fail, it will reload your web browser with an overlay saying that bundling failed, here is the output failed. So if you're sitting there and continuously making little TypeScript stuff, going to the browser to see that it works, making a little change, going to TypeScript or to the web browser, if it fails doing the bundling, you will see it in the website saying it failed bundling, here is the output that failed. So that's why I have overlay equals true. With that in place, I can go to my package.json file again. I'll go and add another script in here, and I'll call it start. And we'll run webpack-dev-server, and we'll do --open. We'll do npm run start. --open just means when you run this command and the Webpack dev server starts up, please start a browser for me. It goes to port 9000, and it runs the application for me. And it runs in the background. And if I go and change a file here, so if we go to the source here, to my app component HTML and change this to actually be spelled properly, and Control S, it reloads the page for me automatically. So it will make sure that every time the bundle is reloaded, it browser syncs and reloads my browser for me. The web server is kind of nice, but it is kind of a I want to work in a web-only scenario. I'm not doing ASP.NET Core. I don't have a backend server or anything like this. I'm just doing static stuff, which can be good enough in certain scenarios. Anybody like source maps? Being able to debug straight into your TypeScript? Quite a nice feature to have. And for the case of having Webpack, it is as complicated as going in here and saying dev tool. Actually, it's not dev tool. Stop it. There it is. Inline dash source dash map. I didn't say that out loud, did I? There are different ways of doing it. You can inline them, or you can have them as separate files. Everything. The easiest way is to do inline, and it's the fastest one to show. I'll just do inline like that, and then I need to go to my my tsconfig.json file, and I just need to say source map true to get TypeScript to output source maps for me. We'll go ahead and we'll do C, yes, run web dev server again. And it opens this up again. F12, open this up, go to application sources. You see down here it says Webpack. We open up Webpack. This is the Webpack dev server giving me a bunch of stuff. I don't know if you can see it. If I do this, you're going to get motion sickness. And also my machine, crap, I shouldn't have done that. My machine is now going to blow up. We'll try to get it to work. I open that. We go to source. We go to demo. We go to appcomponent.ts. It gives me TypeScript out here. I set a breakpoint in my TypeScript. We zoom out again. We F5 this page, and it breaks straight into my TypeScript, and I have source debugging straight into my TypeScript files. And Webpack makes sure that all of the mapping between the source maps and my files and everything just magically works. And by magically, I mean not so magical at all, but it works. It's generally a little bit of a fiddly thing to get started with. I'm going to try and kill this and hope that my machine doesn't burn up now. Okay, so that's kind of cool. What about production builds? What if we actually want to go and not build it like this? We actually do want to minify and mangle it and make it all pretty like it should be. Well, we can actually change this thing here. Yep, this is not going to work. Sorry, give me 1 second. I think the desktop window manager should not take up 96% of your CPU, in case you were wondering. There it is, it's gone. There's something with Surface Books and the zooming thing that causes the window manager to eat all your GPU. So what we can do in here, instead of returning the config file, we can actually return a function. So we can go in here and we can have a function like this. And inside here, I can actually get access to something called environment variables. And in here, I'll go ahead and say prod build. So I'm going to say if somebody is passing in environment variables or an environment configuration, and there is an environment configuration called env.prod, like the prod one, please go ahead and change the mode to production and change the output file name to name hash and then min.js instead. Minor change. Go back to my package.config, and I'm going to go and create a production build here. So for production build, I'm just going to go prod. And to do that, I'll say, please run Webpack for me, but set the environment variable prod for the build. Stop this. npm run prod. Goes ahead, it runs everything down here. Everything is fine. We have a look at this. You can now see that my file went from being 10K to be 14K. That didn't turn out very well. Yep, why did that not work? Actually, I think I did the right thing this time. Oh yeah, so don't put source maps in your production builds inline, because it actually means that your applications or your files grow instead of shrink, which is kind of the wrong way for a minification, right? So if we go back out and have a look at this again, reveal in Explorer, dist, it has now gone from 10 to 3K instead. And the cool thing is you can still see that it contained the old name, so it actually overwrote the 14K bundle, because the hash of the contents of the file, not the source maps, is still the same, because I didn't change the code. I only changed the fact that I didn't want source maps. So production builds is just a matter of setting that one flag, and all of a sudden it minifies and does everything for you, and you're good to go. I want to add one thing. I came up with this about a few hours ago, and I haven't actually tried this part yet. But I want to show you this because there is a cool little thing you can do. Let's see if this works. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull in. Actually, I'm going to put it in source. We'll do reveal in Explorer, and we'll go and I'll go and pull out here. And I have some styles, and I'm going to go into source. I'm going to put it in there because that looks like a nice place. And in my styles, I got 7 minutes to get this to work. I have a styles.less file, which brings in a mixins.less, and it brings in a fluffyclouds.jpg. And no, I'm not this poor at design normally, but this is going to look like crap. But that's fine. It's kind of not the point. The point is that I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say, can you please add another build or another bundle called styles? And I want you to pull in /src/styles/styles.less, like that. I don't need to tell it to use the less extension, because inside of this thing here, it's actually pointing, inside of this, it does point to mixins.less. So there is a file extension all the time, so I don't need to tell it what file extension to use. But I do need to tell it how to handle less files. So to handle less files, I need to have a couple of loaders. And this is the reason I want to show you this is because there is some funkiness here. So we'll do npm I, and I'm going to install the less loader. Less goes from less to CSS. CSS is not JavaScript. we have a CSS loader. The CSS loader goes from CSS to JavaScript string, but that's kind of useless. I want to put it in the browser because it's styles. It should be in the browser. So we have a style loader. So the style loader takes CSS and turns it into a JavaScript that gets written to the actual page. This is just one way to do this. The nicer way is to have a plugin that pulls out and creates a CSS file instead. But for the sake of it, I'm going to show you this, because there be dragons in this configuration. This is my favorite part of the configuration. So we'll go in here and we'll say, there I have a new test. And the test will be, if you find any file that's called .less, please go ahead and use an array of loaders. So it's going to be less, so can you please go ahead? Why is it complaining? You're saying like that? And that? How awesome is that? Thank you for that help. So I'm going to say, okay, I need a less loader. And as I said, less will take it from less to CSS. So I need a CSS loader as well. So I'm going to put the CSS loader before the less loader. And then the CSS loader needs a style loader to actually put it into view. So I'm going to add the style loader before the less loader. So you take the loaders you need in the reverse order that you want to have them run in the array. Why in the reverse order? Because somebody in the JavaScript community needs to get spanked. There is no useful reason for this at all, as I can figure, but it needs to go reverse order. Then I can say npm run build. This is going to fail. It's now going to fail, and it's going to say, dude, cannot find more. Oh, I forgot. Sorry, I need to install npm. I need to install less as well. So the less loader uses less to do the transpile, and it doesn't actually bundle less into it, so you need to install both of them. And I'm just going to say what's going to fail, and then I can keep going, so I've only got 3 minutes. It's going to go and say, I can't load a JPEG file, because there's a reference between my less and a JPEG file, and then it says, I don't know what to do with JPEG files, because you suck. And then I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say, I actually can tell you that. So we'll have a new test, or a new rule. The test is going to be, if you find a file that ends with either JPEG or GIF, like that, please go ahead and use another syntax here. There are a few different syntaxes for use. I want to use the loader called URL loader. It's going to be a string, like that. I want to give it some options. So I can add some configuration to my loader as well and say, here's some config stuff for you. So one of the things I want to set up is limit 8,000. So anything that's less than 8,000 bytes, I want you to handle in one way. Anything above 8,000 bytes, I want you to handle a different way. And I'm going to say the name for the file when you find a file is going to be like this. It's going to be /images. Actually, it's not going to be slash. It's going to be images / name of the file dot. Let's not do hash. Let's just do extension like that. So whenever it finds a JPEG or a GIF file, use the URL loader and then bundle that as well. And then I need to install npm I URL loader and one called file loader because they have a dependency on each other. I install that. Hopefully, I've got about 1 minute to go, 2 minutes. Please npm be fast. So I want to show you two things. There it is. It runs. npm run build. Small prayer for, I've sacrificed my things to demo gods today, so that worked. I go in here and I have a look at my bundle. I want to find, actually let's do this. Let's delete that and run the build again because I want to show you my bundle. So now it generates an output, and here is my demo bundle, my styles bundle. This is all of my CSS in here. The CSS is down here somewhere. You can see fluffyclouds.jpg, and that is in the images folder, and it copied out my images, my fluffyclouds.jpg into the images folder. And if I go back out here and I refresh everything, I get nothing because I was running on the wrong thing. Let's run this. I get fluffy clouds. Whoop, whoop. Very beautiful. But the cool thing is when I go into my styles here, let's do npm run watch instead. And we go here and I go to my styles folder and I change this from full screen to tiled. And I change this from fluffyclouds.jpg to gopher.gif. I save it, it rebundles. The cool thing about my rebundling now is there are two cool things. One is that if actually, let's delete the dist folder and restart this so you can see what's actually happening. Build. In my dist folder, you're now going to see that it outputs styles and index, but no images folder. Because my gopher.gif, I just want to show you, by the way, that the gopher.gif is awesome, is less than 8K. And since it's less than 8K, and I told Webpack that in the configuration, say anything less than 8K, handle that differently. So if I go into my styles here, and we scroll down, you will somewhere around here, my image is now base64 encoded string inside of my JavaScript instead. So I have literally embedded my GIF file inside of my JavaScript as a string instead of adding it as a file separately, which is quite nice, so it saves us an extra download. That was about it. Does it feel like you found is it as scary anymore? The actual Webpack part isn't that scary, so hopefully you got something you can go home and play with. It does get way scarier than this, I promise you. There are other things, but go to the website and look at their docs because they are good. And the thing that you need to figure out, because what I've done today is pretty much what you need to do. You just need to figure out what loaders do I need, how do I configure them, and what plugins do I need to run, and how do I configure them. But this is Webpack, and this is basically all you need to do. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget the evals. The evals are the green notes out on the table. Those evil laughs that you just gave me doesn't give me a lot of confidence for the green evals. I'm just